Hi everyone, do you know what I really hate? Trying to figure out why my HTML and CSS just aren't working well together. Here's the deal. I have my document, have my HTML, have my CSS. In my mind, everything should be working just right. Everything is laid out correctly, everything looks just the way it should. Yet I preview in the browser and things don't work right. What's going wrong? What could be the problem? How do I fix it? Well, to help with this, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite features ever created, which is the Firebug add-on to Firefox. And for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you how Firebug makes working with CSS and diagnosing problems extremely easy. I will show you how it can solve all of your problems. Well, at least your CSS problems. So let's get started. To help you visualize all the really cool things Firebug brings to the table, I created a very simple example. Here I have an HTML page that contains a few pieces of text, a giant box which is nothing more than a div with a fixed size and a background color, and a smiley face inside of it. So let's go ahead and see how Firebug can be used to help us understand what's going on here. So I have Firefox running, and I'm going to bring up Firebug by hitting F12. And notice what happens once I hit F12. You'll see that the page I'm currently on is still visible, but below it, the Firebug UI is now shown. You can see that there are various tabs for being able to look at the HTML, CSS, script, DOM, and all of that. And of course, you also have the ability to, for any element selected, be able to modify and look at the CSS. And for the purposes of this particular video, we're going to be focusing most of our time on the HTML tab, and then some of the tabs right here, namely style and layout. And we'll get to that shortly. So now that we have the Firebug UI up, let's take a few steps back and just talk about what Firebug does, why it's useful, and why you should really use it as part of your development. When you're looking at a web page, as simple as this or something more complex, what you're often seeing is a collision between lots and lots of lines of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All of them work together to create the final output that you see in the browser. Oftentimes, when you're trying to figure out what's going on, all those content, all of that HTML and CSS often just gets in the way. What you really want is a very targeted way, a very precise way of targeting exactly what you are interested in and not worry about all the additional stuff that goes along with making your web page work. That's where a tool like Firebug really comes in handy. So let's say I want to know more about how this particular yellow box was made. Traditionally, I could go to the CSS and look at all of the various style rules I've defined, which for this example is not overwhelming, but for a more realistic case, you'll see lots and lots of style rules. What I can do is I can use the element inspector and just hover over or click on the various elements I care about. Notice as I'm hovering over my current app, you can see the heading tag being highlighted in HTML and any styles affecting it displayed in the bottom right corner. And similarly for all the other pieces of HTML that are in this document. What I care about though is the box, so let me go ahead and select it. Once I've done that, notice that you can see that there's a div whose ID is box, and there's the style rule who targets that particular element, and you can see there's a background color that is yellow with the width and height that is specified. So what I can do though that makes Firebug really useful is not just be content with just looking at what the values actually are right now. I can actually change it. I can actually make tweaks to it to see what it could look like if I were to do some more changes. So for example, let's say that I'm not a huge fan of the yellow color. Let's go with let's make it blue. I'm just gonna go blue. And notice what happens. Immediately after I typed in a valid value for the background color property, the color changed from yellow to blue. And you're not limited, of course, to just making changes to properties that have already been defined. You can add your own property. So rounded corners are all the rage these days. So let me go ahead and add the border radius property. And let's make it 25 pixels. Let's make it really round. And again, notice that instantaneously, the moment I've completed this particular declaration, you can see the what used to be a yellow square is now blue and is now rounded, which is really cool. Firebug provides you with some additional visualizations on the CSS that you have. Being able to display a flat list of everything is useful, if you are interested in seeing them in the way you would write your CSS. But there are certain sets of properties that are better visualized in a different way. And the one that I'm going to be showing you is layout. It's the box model. The arrangement of elements and the size of elements is often one of the most complicated things to explain and to often debug. And what Firebug does is it combines the margin, border, padding, and width and height properties into essentially this box-like UI where you can very quickly see what's going on. So right now I have my heading 1 text selected, and notice that you have heading 1. I only declared the font family, font size, and the margin, bottom, and padding, but the browser has added its own style to this particular element, which is a margin of 32. And what I don't want is, I see all this additional space taken up. I just want to see what it looks like if I don't have it. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the 32 and hit OK. And once I've done that, I can very quickly see, okay, this looks quite good. I can see that I don't have any of these values specified. So my solution would be to go ahead and make that change for real on my web server itself. So that's a very quick overview of being able to use Firebug to essentially select an HTML element, see all the various styles that are currently affecting it, and then make tweaks to see how it would look if you were to actually make those changes. Now, a simple example is good, but that's probably not very realistic though. So let's do something that's more involved, something that if you know CSS reasonably well, you'll be able to be extremely productive using Firebug. So let me go ahead and load the KIRUPA.com homepage, and it is taking its time to load for some reason. Okay, what I'm going to do is this. When I scroll the page for some reason, when I scroll the page, you'll see that there's a header region that is fixed. It doesn't change. The login, the share, and the search always stays in the top corner of the page. And what I want to do is just see what it will take to have it not be fixed, but actually just be part of the site's layout. Just scroll along with all the other content. So let's get started. Just like before, I'm going to just visually select some element. And right now I've selected header main, which seems to indicate, based on the highlight you see in the browser, the entire region that I am interested in. And I know that in order to make something have a position that stays fixed at a location, you have the position property whose value is fixed. And what I'm going to do is just disable this particular property. I'm going to hit the little red icon, the no operation icon that appears next to it, and just to have it disabled. And once I've done that, ignore for now the jump it just made from where it was originally positioned. But if I were to scroll the page though, you'll see that it no longer scrolls along with, it scrolls with the content, which is exactly what I want. But there is this annoying gap, and let's go ahead and look into fixing that. So the gap seems to be caused by me changing it from position fixed to not have a position be fixed. Let me go to Layout tab and see what's going on here. So for a header main, margin and padding, or margin and border, have been specified, and that is clearly not enough to the -1 and 1. It is not enough to give you the large gap you see here. Let me hover over logo add area. That is completely out of the question there. So let me go ahead and just look into header main. Both header left, both this region here and the right side, header right, are all within the confines of header main, so that doesn't really seem to be the problem. So I do know what the problem is though. The parent container for header main, it's currently set to have a box sizing, which is just really just a content. What I need to do is change the display a bit. I want to change the display to be inline block. And once I've done that, notice that the gap is now gone. It is exactly where I would want it in relation to its vertical position in relation to the browser. Of course, the problem is also it is no longer center aligned. It's no longer center aligned. So what I can do is do several things. The simplest thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and specify a text align of center on my body. By default, I have text align set to left. I'm going to go ahead and hit center. All right. That fixed the header part of it, but now notice what happens when I look at the rest of my content. Everything else is now centered, which I probably don't want. Just like many things with CSS, fixing one thing somewhere else often ends up breaking something elsewhere. So what I'm going to do is I have a div called main body, which essentially acts as a wrapper for all the content that makes up everything that's not the header region. I'm going to override the text line property on that element by specifying it to be left. And once I've done that, notice that now all of my text is properly left aligned. And similarly, I can see that some of the text here is center aligned. Just like before, I'm going to go ahead and override that by saying text align equal to center. And sorry, not center, left. All right, and this is more or less what I am currently interested in. So one thing you should note though, in case it wasn't very clear from what I'm doing right now, all the changes you're making in Firebug, they're not actually saved on your server. This is only local to this particular instance of what you're doing in your browser. Anyone who visits your website right now will see the old look of the site before the changes were actually made. What Firebug really allows you to do is do like a proof of concept to see what it will take to get your UI, get the look of what you're trying to do, to be what you're desiring. It is not designed to be a way to commit those changes from whatever changes you're doing, because now that I know it's possible, I'll need to take a step back and think about what the best way of doing all of these things are, making it work across multiple browsers, and a lot of things that generally goes into doing more of a production quality level of changes. So with that, I hope you found this very helpful, this very introductory look at how Firebug can make working with CSS very, very simple.